everyone. Welcome to this week's installment of the CARIMAC Research Seminar Series. The seminars are held every Wednesday and have been a staple research activity at CARIMAC for the past few years. They are intended to provide researchers with an opportunity to share their research projects and research strategies. Training on the various aspects of the research process is also part of our scope of activities. These sessions also provide necessary support for our MPhil PhD candidates who are completing their research degrees. The objective of our seminars then is to foster a thriving research environment here at CARIMAC. It is our goal through this initiative to build stronger research relationships with our colleagues in academia and industry across the Mona campus, the UWI, and of course the world. This will help us make meaningful strides towards not only theorizing about ourselves and our experiences, but also in sharing such vital information with a global audience. Again, I extend a warm welcome to you all. Okay, so we're moving on then. For our presenter for this afternoon is Dr. Livingston White, Senior Lecturer here at CARIMAC and the Director of the school. So I'm going to invite Abigail Whittingham to introduce Dr. White. Immediately following her introduction, Dr. White will begin his presentation. Thank you. Abigail?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure for me to introduce the presenter for this week's seminar. He is Dr. Livingston White. Dr. Livingston A. White is a senior lecturer and the current director of the Caribbean School of Media and Communication at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. He teaches courses in communication, research, methodology, social marketing, and behavior change communication theory at both the graduate and undergraduate levels. He has also conducted research and training in communication analysis and planning for, as well as consulted with various regional Caribbean-based agencies, including the Caribbean Regional Network of Seropositives, Pan American Health Organization or World Health Organization, Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the Bernard Van Leer Foundation, Caribbean Child Support Initiative, and the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, focusing on issues ranging from the coverage of health in the Caribbean media, advocacy communication for sustainable environmental management, to early childhood development, climate change, and crisis communication during natural disasters. Dr. White has conducted knowledge, attitude, and practice surveys on climate change to inform the development of a national climate change communication intervention for Jamaica. He has also completed various message development focus groups and message recall surveys for HIV and AIDS awareness campaigns locally, including Jamaica's Pinch, Leave an Inch, and Roll condom campaign and the Caribbean Broadcast Media Partnership on HIV and AIDS Live Up regional campaign. Additionally, he has conducted a message pre-testing focus group for Jamaica's National Family Planning Board's Human Rights Campaign, Everybody Have Rights, and more recently for the Transport Authority's study on the knowledge, attitude, and behaviors of Jamaican commuters regarding public transportation. Dr. White holds a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication from CARIMAC UE and a Master of Science in Communication Theory and Research from the College of Communication, Florida State University. He completed his doctoral studies in 2009 at the Florida State University, focusing on health communication and statistical applications in communication research. Please make Dr. Livingston White feel welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you so much. This is a point where I'm supposed to be made host so I can share my screen, and I think, yes, I am now. Can person see?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm in full screen mode, so I really won't be able to see the chat. So if you're making comments while I'm presenting, I'll respond to them once the presentation is over. So I'm happy to do this. It's something I've always wanted to do. Those of you who read the abstract, saw that we are promising to share with you experience from over 10 years. When I started working on this, I realized that I'm actually going back as far as 2002. So that's more than 10 years of doing focus group research for pre-testing messages. So in this presentation, I'm going to say a little bit about focus group and the steps in conducting focus group, and then I will give an overview of some of the campaigns we've worked on, specifically 8 campaigns, and then it's towards the end that I'll start sharing the insights. So let's get right away into it. So the focus group, it's a methodology, as we know, that's a carefully planned discussion designed to obtain perceptions on a defined area of interest in a permissive, non-threatening environment. I always like to remind persons of the history of the focus group methodology, because a lot of people tend to misapply focus group. Not every discussion in a group is a focus group discussion. It really started out as the focused interview with Robert Merton. Those of you who've read the history will know this story, where they really wanted to move away from looking at individual interviews where the interviewer would bring their own biases to bear on the interview. And they wanted to know if there was a way to start speaking to people in a group setting where they would feel more comfortable to share their experiences and somehow minimize the influence of an interviewer. And so the focused interview came about, and over time it became known as a focus group. So now this particular method is quite applicable. It's been used in a lot of disciplines, and I think it has a lot to do for us in communication, especially when we're developing campaigns, to use focus group to help us develop messages, pre-test messages, before we actually produce and implement campaigns. The steps, simple 8 steps, taken from Wimmer and Dominic, one of the common texts we use in media, mass media research here at CARIMAC. You start with defining that problem. And when it comes to message designing, usually the issue here is that we always want to know about the reception of the message, the comprehension, is the message understood? So there are certain variables of interest that we would be testing for when we go into a message design process, wanting to see if the message will actually resonate with the select or priority target audience. The selecting of the sample is another very important step in focus group research. The determination of the number of groups is always an issue. One focus group is not really, it does not really make up focus group methodology. Ideally, you will do several focus groups in a single study. And we'll talk some more about that when I get to insights. Preparing the study mechanics or logistics, to get people into a room to have a discussion with them requires a lot of planning, selecting the site, thinking about recording, looking at refreshment, the location of the room, and all those logistic matters. And then, of course, the material that you will share in the focus group, especially when it comes to pre-testing messages for a campaign. The big question is, what exactly do we test? Versions of the messages, mock-ups, how do you work with our design teams to get them to produce versions of the message that we will pre-test in the actual focus group discussion? So the preparation of those materials is always going to be important. There's also the very necessary instrument for this method, the focus group moderator's guide, which will include your questions that you're going to ask in this message pretest process. Then, of course, you conduct the sessions, analyze your data, and prepare your report. So those are the steps in a nutshell. Now, I'm going to share with you examples of some campaigns that I've worked on, and I've worked on them with some of the individuals in this room. I'm happy to see Nancy Maturi. This will take you back to the UA Heart days. Nancy, remember when we had the UWI HIV AIDS response program? back in the
Yes,
early
I do.
2000s, yes, and
Yes.
sexual safety issue on the campus. The implementing period for this particular campaign, which targeted university students, was 2002 to 2003. It was funded by the Sir Hask Project, strengthening the institutional response to HIV and AIDS in the Caribbean. Okay, and the formats that were used: folders, mouse pads, messages. Anybody recall these? If you're on the campus within the last 20 years, you may have recalled seeing these folders that were produced for students, the mouse pad. There was a timetable planner, and the main message coming out of this campaign: are you at risk of HIV? Those focus groups were done with students at the Mona campus. The next campaign, one that I'm proud of, this again coming under the National HIV STI program in Jamaica through the Ministry of Health, looked at promoting proper male condom use. And interestingly, in this campaign, the focus group was done after the campaign was implemented as part of a message recall activity. And when you would ask the program planners, why are you testing messages after you've already produced and distributed the campaign? For them, they were looking at this campaign as part of a larger process of targeting HIV, STI in Jamaica. And so they wanted to get insights from how the campaign was received, how the messages were received. And so how could they use that feedback to inform subsequent campaigns and design of messages. Okay, this was funded by World Bank Global Fund USAID. They had their poster, a mini brochure, branded condoms. There was also a TV ad demonstrating how to pinch, leave an inch, and roll. Live Up, a regional campaign implemented by the Caribbean Broadcast Media Partnership, targeting HIV in the Caribbean, the priority audience, adolescents. It was implemented during 2012. And Olivia, you may remember this one, Olivia. We worked on this one together with UNICEF and Alison Leacock out of CBMP based in Barbados. Well, this one, it was Olympic season, and I think they used the Olympic champions, Jamaican Olympic champions, to do video ads, to target youngsters when it relating to matters of HIV and safer sex. The next one, another sexual safety one. This one is the health center now at the UWI, the Sexual Safety Initiative Program. Right, Dr. Bravo? I think you also worked on this one with me, if you recall. University students, and this was done during 2010 to 2013, funded by the Ford Foundation, again, targeting university students. We went back to the usual folders, timetables, and the key message there: keep it sexy, keep it safe, use protection. I think a part of this campaign also worked on a booklet on the UWI HIV workplace policy. So that was also another component of this campaign that targeted staff. And then back to Ministry of Health, the National HIV STI program. This time they were targeting males for doing the HIV test. During 2010 to 2012, funded by the Global Fund, they had TV and radio ads, posters, and billboards. And again, this was done after the campaign was implemented. The focus group was done after the campaign to get feedback to inform subsequent campaigns. And there's an image from a TV ad with the men talking about getting tested. We shift from HIV and AIDS now to productivity. This one was rather interesting, with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. The Jamaica Productivity Center wanted to promote productivity in the workplace. And they created a jingle, an actual song. And then the directive to the communication team at the time was develop a campaign. So they reached out to me to assist them to test the messages because, they were saying they didn't get to conceptualize the original song or jingle where the campaign all started. And so the testing was used now to help to justify the additional messaging that would support the already produced jingle and song. That was done in 2014. We tested billboards. I think they implemented it through JIS, and many of the messages would have seen in time made available for government broadcasting. They had a music video with the jingle and so on. And then the Ad Council of Jamaica, a group of volunteers from the AAAJ, that's the Advertising Agencies Association of Jamaica, and the private sector, coming together to work on socially beneficial messaging. They've done campaigns on domestic violence, road safety, and then parenting. This one was very interesting because it took some time to develop. We started working on it in 2012, but it actually didn't get implemented until 2014. And the reason for that is you would have different agencies volunteering to do the design for the messages. And the first concept was thrown out. The designers were using images of food, the circular pizza, two patties to represent a clock face. And the nutritionists in the education system did not like the approach because they felt that it was sending the wrong message about taking the time to spend time with your children in good parenting. And so they went back to the drawing board. And the campaign was done over. And the messaging now, this is where I came into the picture and I insisted, show the behavior, show the proper parenting behaviors. And they did a lot of formats. These appeared in the newspaper. There was TV, there was radio. I think they also had billboards, again, because it's all voluntary and they were looking for complementary placement in media. Not all the designs were placed, but I was happy that I convinced the Ad Council to do pre-testing of the messages. Unfortunately, when they started developing the domestic violence campaign that they worked on and another campaign on road safety, they went straight to production and didn't bother to go through the step of doing the focus group, again, because they felt that it lengthened the development phase for the campaign. But regardless, it's still a very important phase. And so we must do our focus group pre-testing for our messages. Another campaign, the most recent one I've worked on, is with the National Family Planning Board, targeting human rights. Some of you may be seeing this campaign right now. It's quite current. It was tested in 2020 and launched, I think, in December 2020. So it's been out and you may have seen the billboards, heard the jingle. These billboards have been appearing in and around Kingston and across the island. Everybody have rights. You may have seen this ad. This is a scene from a TV ad. So these represent the various campaigns I've worked on, I've been fortunate to be a part of. Now, looking at the insights, based on all these focus groups, when it comes to matters of sampling, there's no agreement in the literature on how many participants you should have in your focus group. Let's start there. Some will tell you 5 to 10. I think Kruger and Casey uses the 5 to 10. They've been writing about focus group for some time. They're in a fifth edition now for a textbook that they write on focus group. Others will say 6 to 8 persons, 8 to 12. Regardless of the lack of agreement, I would say go anywhere from 5 to 12 and recognize that the larger the focus group, the larger the composition of the group, is the longer the discussion will be. And ideally, you want to keep it to below 90 minutes, 60 minutes, really. All right. Over-recruit to meet your target per group. Just this week, we're doing some focus group for the Transport Authority, and we recruited 15 persons. Only 5 showed up. So over-recruiting, I can't emphasize that one. I think that is one of the first insights I'll share with you, getting persons to show up for your focus group. And by the way, these focus groups that we've been doing since the pandemic have all been online. Before, they were physical, of course. And then related to the number of participants within the focus groups, you also have the number of focus groups you should actually do for the particular study. I remember in my time, I have done a focus group with 4 persons, 4. Yes, sometimes you have to make that tough decision that you're going to go ahead with the focus group with only 4 individuals. And a very skilled moderator can get a lot of information out of your 4-member focus group. Of course, you may be wondering what happens when you over-recruit and everybody shows up. Here is what I've been told, some of my professors who've been doing focus groups for all their career, Jay Rayburn, the late Jay Rayburn, who taught me this methodology at Florida State University, he would always say to us, if you over-recruit and everybody shows up, you should still pay them and turn them away. Okay, thank them for their time, invite them probably to another session if you have subsequent sessions, but if you're not going to use them, you should still have some, what I'd like to call cancellation fee. And that fee, that incentive may be different from the incentive that you give to the other focus group members. So that's something to consider. Interestingly, we have a new strategy now, and Dr. Bravo is working with me on this project, and Jason, where we're saying that we will over-recruit, and if everybody shows up. So we're over-recruiting, large numbers. We want to get minimum 12 persons in the group. So we're using 3 times. So we're over-recruiting. I think we reached out to about 30 odd people, or is it in the 20s, just so that we can ensure we get the actual 12. We said and decided that if everybody shows up, what we will do, because it's a team moderation that we were doing, moderating it, myself and Dr. Bravo, we would simply create 2 rooms and do separate groups simultaneously. Okay, so the online focus group allows for that. And I think it's something you could do physically, of course, if you have the luxury of more than one moderator. So something to think about. Another thing, the audience segmentation variables, I want to say something about that, and I'll probably mention it more when I speak about homogeneity. With the number of focus groups now, I have seen where people have done 1 focus group and they're happy with that. But when it comes to message testing, you really want to think about your audience segmentation variables for the campaign. So say, for example, your campaign is targeting males and females. Ideally, you should be doing at least 3 to 4 per demographic group. So 3 to 4 groups of males, 3 to 4 groups of females. Why do we say 3 to 4 groups? The experienced focus group moderators and planners who use this methodology will tell you that you tend to achieve saturation around your 3rd or 4th group. What the literature advises is that you should plan 5 or 6 focus groups and always be on the lookout for saturation. Now, saturation is that point at which you don't get any new information. And so it doesn't make any sense you continue conducting the focus group. So you want to watch out for saturation, but plan for many groups and don't be afraid to cancel your 5th and 6th focus group because you have got all the information you can possibly get out of the focus group by your 4th group, and so on. Of course, with limited budgets, sometimes we have never been able to plan 3 or 4. Sometimes it's just 1 per demographic grouping or 2 per demographic grouping. And again, we rely on a skilled moderator to get as much out of those groups. You have to be creative sometimes, because if the groups are very small, you probably can stretch your budget and do several groups. But if large numbers keep showing up, let's say you keep getting 10 to 12 persons per group, if your budget can't allow for you to have those subsequent groups, you have a bit of a challenge there. But ideally, 3 to 4 per group of interest, and that is usually where you will get your saturation. The literature will tell you sometimes you may take up to 10 groups to reach your point of saturation. Again, it depends on the issue, it depends on the topic, what you're studying, and so on. But for message designing, I think you can get out of 3 groups, enough information to really improve on your campaign messages when you're pre-testing them. Other insights, the matter of incentives, honorarium, how much, when to disclose that you're sharing or giving an honorarium, when to pay. Again, no agreement in the literature. In Jamaica, I know we have paid from as low as, $300 in credit, $200 in phone credit. That seems to be a popular incentive now in the online space. But before, individuals used to get 1,000 Jamaican dollars, 1,500 Jamaican dollars. What you use to determine how much money you pay is to think of the person's profession and what they'd be giving up to come and sit with you for an hour or 90 minutes. And so if you are doing focus group with, let's say, lawyers or medical professionals or some executives, You can be paying them. I remember a professor telling me he's paid up to $250 to each participant. And again, that rate is because of the level at which these persons are professionally quite senior in their profession or in the industry. And so again, you can pay as much as $250 to the participants. Back here in Jamaica, I've never heard of such high rates. We may go into 10,000, maybe 15,000, 20,000. Again, it depends on your budget and how important it is for you to get these individuals to sit in a room with you or to sit online with you to have a discussion. For the sake of informed consent and not to make the incentive look as if you're coercing people or bribing people to participate, it's usually important that you get persons consenting in your screening process that they would like to participate. And then after you get the consent, you say to them, we will give you an honorarium for your time, okay? In my practice, I've found that when you're doing the screening over the phone, you have to, think about the respondent and their willingness and ask them sometimes why they would not be willing to participate. I find that sometimes when you ask why they would not want to do it, you'll get some reasons like, well, I don't have any money to travel to the location. And that's where you can say, well, we can help you with transportation. We can give you some honorarium to help you cover transportation. And then when you do that, they're usually likely to say, yes, they will show up after all. I remember a case where we're recruiting for the media regulation study with BCJ that we did as part of the team with Corinne and Anthony and Yvette and Lorraine Cook. And when we were recruiting for those focus groups, it wasn't message testing. We were getting feedback on the BCJ and media regulation. We were talking to somebody and they were saying, boy, I live in Lawrence Tavern. I have to take 3 buses and boy, I don't know, I can't make it. So sometimes the way they talk to you, you can almost tell that they're already suggesting the only way I'll come is if you're going to ensure that I'll get something back to help me with transportation. I remember when I was at the clinic on Slipen Road, the STI clinic there, doing some of the HIV messaging pre-testing. We had persons from in and around the community, and I had a lady who was talking to me to tell me, oh, she showed up, but then before the focus group started, she was going on and on. Oh, I think I'm gonna have to leave, because I need to go find something to cook for dinner, and I don't know that I can stay because I need to get some money. And when I told her, no, man, we will be giving you something, she said, oh, all right, then I can stay. But so sometimes the respondents, the potential participants will speak to you in a way, it's almost as if they want to find out if they'll be getting paid for this. But I usually like to get their consent first before I start talking about the money for ethical reasons. And of course, when to pay. Clearly, right, immediately after the focus group, or if you have some arrangement to send the funds to them to their phone when it's phone credit, that's something. But I had a professor who said to me once that he had a differential rate because if somebody sat in the focus group and did not share as much, they were soft-spoken, they didn't speak up that much, he didn't give them the same amount of money as the other persons. I said, oh, that's discrimination. I've never had to do that. But a professor said to me once that he would adjust the pay rate based on the level of participation, because in his mind, he's paying for this information. So you better speak up in the focus group and give me some data. When it comes on to recruitment, the screening, is very important because this is how you're going to always establish your homogeneity. And I'll tell you a little story about why it is important to stick to homogeneity. You can sample from another method, especially when the focus group is used as a follow-up method to a survey. Sometimes in the survey, you will ask persons, are you willing to do a follow-up discussion after you complete the survey? And that's another way you can get participants into your survey. The backup plan, of course, it's always important to have such a plan when low numbers show up. And I can tell you this week when we had only 5 people show up out of, well, it wasn't even 5. 5 is what we got eventually. Initially, 2 persons showed up out of the 15 that we targeted. And we had to get on the phone and start calling around to get persons to join the focus group. So you always need to have that backup plan and always need to have someone who's going to be on the phone half an hour before the focus group, even the first 5 minutes into the focus group, trying to encourage persons, reminding them to show up for your focus group. So recruitment is very important. And when you do it, you need to think about homogeneity. We spoke about saturation already, so I won't get much into that again. Saturation is achieved when you've got all the information you think you can get. Now, let's talk a little bit about the homogeneity. The ideal situation is to have homogeneous groups for your focus groups, and that is one measure I use to tell when a group discussion really elevates to becoming a focus group discussion. It needs to be focused to the point where the members of the group have some similar characteristic. And how it is to work is that once those members have that similar background, you then go in now and you try to get a range of opinions on the topic, or in terms of message design, you want to get the range of interpretations, all the feedback you can get on how the message is being interpreted, understood, and so on. You don't always need to go for consensus. In fact, you're more into divergence. It's the difference in opinions that you're interested in, especially when it comes to feedback on your messaging. And then you want that qualitative depth. There's always the issue about using numbers in focus group. It is ideally a qualitative method. In an extended focus group, sometimes you may give out a questionnaire in the discussion itself to get, feedback on some scales or items, and you may report those. But ultimately, that is not the essence of focus group. And so to say, 70% like the message, 30%, we should avoid reporting those kinds of things. I usually report quantitative descriptors for describing the composition of the group. So the group had so many males, so many females in a mixed gender group. You give the average age of the participants and so on. So you can use your quantitative descriptors there. Some texts will argue for heterogeneity, to say that based on the topic, you may want to have a mix. But for me, I think the ideal is always going to go after a homogeneous group. When we did the Live Up campaign Pretest, that one taught me the value of having a homogeneous group. I remember in the morning, we were to have an all-male group to test the message by Johann Blake. And then the afternoon, it was a mixed mature group. So we had a young group of males in their early 20s. Then we had a female, early 20s, and then another group of mixed mature adults, married in their 30s and so on. And the way the campaign was set up, you had your Veronica Campbell message for the mixed mature group, Shelley Ann Fraser Price for the young female, and then Johann Blake for the young male. What happened was, in the afternoon group, the mixed mature group, a young male showed up, and he missed the morning session. And we said, by all means, just join the afternoon session. And when I started moderating that discussion, it became apparent to me that he was not really a part of that group, because everybody else loved the Veronica Campbell message that was designed for their demographic. And he kept saying, Johann Blake, yes, it's the male. And he kept referring to the young, and said he preferred the Shelley Ann Fraser Price version of the message and the Johann Blake version. And it dawned on me that, wow, he's speaking differently, and he really is from another group. And really, he should have remained with his all-male group that was held in the morning. Because now, as a moderator, I had to control his input and say, yes, thank you for that, but I'm interested in hearing what the others are saying about the messaging with Veronica Campbell, which is really targeting their demographic. So again, if you do get your focus group mixed up with the demographics, a skilled moderator would have to control the input from the various demographics to ensure that you get the information that you're going after. Now, this is the biggest issue when it comes to message design, pre-test materials. Try to insist on working with the design team before starting. And, I've had the good fortune when we did Live Up, Alison Leacock, she was great working with us. What she did, because she knew we were going to test the messages, when she created those videos, she did several takes and got several versions, so that when we got the feedback from the focus group, she was able to go and easily re-edit without having to reshoot scenes. And that happened because she sat in the planning meetings and she understood from the get-go that this focus group is going to give me feedback that will force me to change scenes, to change what they say. So let me shoot it in a way that I have the flexibility to edit. And so not many designers are willing to do that because, again, if the budget doesn't allow for it, they're not willing to do it. When we did Everybody Have Rights back in 2020, again, the agency doing that campaign, Pan Media, worked along with us from the early phase in the design of the moderator's guide, and they understood that they were going to get changes. So they would do the mock-ups, do different versions, and even say to us, here are 3 approaches to this message design. Test it for us and let us know which ones they're liking and so on. And so what do you test? You always want to get something close to final, but in the ideal world, you won't. And again, you will have to, I like to test messages in as close to their final version as possible. And that will cost you some money. So if you have the budgets, try to do that, but respect the designer's need, for revision and the need to have another component of your budget for revision. So always budget for revisions if you're going to seriously apply focus group for message testing. Something else that I've always insisted on in these types of focus groups with message design, the minute you start explaining as moderator the purpose of the campaign and explaining the material to the focus group participants, it is clear that your campaign messaging is not working. If you have to tell them what the real meaning is behind the message, you should do your moderation in a way that the participants can give you the feedback and you listen carefully and probe for the interpretations to hear how they're interpreting the message. And if they're not getting it the way they're supposed to, it means that you'll have to go back to the drawing board. And that's the beauty of the focus group. You can always test message comprehension in that setting in a very safe way. The notion of physical versus virtual, the pandemic taught us that we can now do online focus groups, but please, technical issues and digital literacy. Just this week when we did an online focus group, we had participants who got bumped off, so the size of your group will vary based on connectivity. And of course, you have individuals who are not necessarily au fait with the technology. They don't know how to open up the mic in a Zoom meeting. So you want to ensure that you probably even have a little orientation session for your participants before you get into doing these online focus groups. In concluding, always remember to plan carefully, allocate time for your focus group in your campaign development when you're using it for message development. It is an important step in the message design process. And based on my experience, I've seen focus groups conducted at different phases in a campaign. After a campaign has been implemented to test for messaging, and you want to really do it at that ideal time where it's before the final production and placement of campaign material. And I'll stop there to take your questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Right, the floor is open, folks. I know
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in first from the deep end. Thank you very much, Dr. White. That was very interesting. Very, very interesting. Just a question about the use of Zoom and the protocols to observe. Apart from the literacy, what about camera on, camera off? Does it make a difference? Does it detract from the quality? How do you get persons to turn on their cameras when they really don't want to?
I will say that, in the online focus groups that I've done, I've left it up to the participants to decide. I'm more interested in hearing what you have to say. Body, like you see in the physical room, seeing the body language or facial expressions, it helps, okay? So you lose that when you go online. Sometimes it's the intonation in the voice that will help. I remember when we were recruiting for the Transport Authority's focus groups, some participants asked, do I have to turn on my camera? It almost becomes a reason. And then again, the matter of confidentiality. In the online space, it's good that you can ask persons to change their name and put a pseudonym or some code, and also not show their face. So I would not necessarily insist on the face showing just for the sake of confidentiality. Okay, but I do appreciate the value of seeing facial expressions that can help with the conversation and the discussion.
Right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Can I also add something there? When you do,
go ahead.
Yeah, so when you do online focus groups and you want to have their faces on, one of the things you could do is when you're filling out the consent,
Yes.
so letting them know in advance that you'll be recording and they can consent at that point. So I don't know what the process for approval for ethics approval at UE, I don't remember, it's a long time.
Yes.
But that's one of the things that you can actually include there. So once they consent to it, then you can always bring it up when you're actually collecting the data. If they don't consent at that point, then you cannot make them turn the camera on. But if they consent, then at least they'll be ready to do that.
That's right. Letting them be aware of it beforehand. Yes, that you will want the cameras to be on. I've only done 2 sets so far. So I'm getting my experience with online focus groups, and I'm sure we'll be doing more in the future. I see some questions in the chat. Trudy Abraham, sorry. Are refreshments necessary in a focus group? The literature will tell you it's one of the strategies to ensure that people show up. And depending on the time of day that you're doing the focus group, if you're expecting people to come straight from work to participate, if it's during their lunchtime, you want to provide refreshments, okay? And again, you know, I've always done it in the physical ones. Yes, we budget for it. It's important to budget for some refreshment, water, some snack. You know, I've had full meals served. I remember we were testing a campaign for a corporate client, and based on the product that was being tested, it was a full meal, you know, and it was a wealth product for a bank. And they really went all out because these were some of their clients who, you know, invested a lot of money. So again, coming back to the same argument about the incentive, how much do you pay? It depends on the background of the participants, how much they earn in their professional lives and so on. It's not considered a distraction truly because you can serve it at the end, okay? You can serve it at the end of the focus group, which is what I normally do. I serve the refreshment at the end, okay? Sidella is asking, how do you decide on a general time limit per single focus group session? 90 minutes, if you can keep it to 60 minutes, more power to you. I've had focus groups that have gone to 2 hours. But again, when the discussion is lively, the people don't want to leave and they're the ones talking and going on and so on. So sometimes you'll have very active participants, enthusiastic, and they will stay with you. And they know refreshment will be served and they know that they're going to collect their honorarium at the end. Trust me, they will stay with you, okay? 1 hour is tight, and you'll get 1 hour if you are doing it with a smaller number. So let's say you have 5, 6 persons, you'll probably get out of there within the hour. Last one we did, it went for about 90 minutes. Yes. Any other question?
Just an observation, Dr. White. It seems that the moderator is critical, that the moderator should be somebody central to the research process, know what the primary objectives are, and be able to control in order to achieve those objectives.
You know, thank you for that point, Nova. I've moderated most of these focus groups I've participated in, but I've also had other moderators work along with me. And, you know, the training in moderation is very important, just to know how to manage a discussion, manage the room, read body language, pull people in when they don't want to speak, silence that person who is talkative and taking over the focus group, allowing, so it is a skill, and you know, you have to know how to animate a group and get everybody talking. And so there are strategies you can use, you know, because that's what I'm hearing in your question. How do you get a crowd animated, a group animated to really want to talk to you? That warm up at the start of the focus group is very important. letting people know that you're not going to use their real names in the focus group helps. And when I do physical focus groups, I tend to use name tents. So that's one of the activities when they come in, the administrative activity. Here's a marker, here's a sheet of paper. You're going to fold it into a tent and write a pseudonym. And the pseudonym can be related to the topic of discussion, okay? And then you ask a question, a very light icebreaker question that gets them. So usually for the campaign message pre-testing, we will say, okay, describe your favorite TV ad or describe your most memorable campaign. And that usually gets them warmed up. So you need to have a warm-up activity, an icebreaker at the start. And then throughout now as moderator, you need to keep watching for the cues. And you have strategies that you can use to probe. Why do you say that? Explain further. Go around the room, give everybody a chance to respond. Tell them that I need to hear from each of you, and call out the ones who are silent and so on. I see Corinne hands up. Corinne?
Thank you, Dr. White. No, I've always thought that choosing the moderator is very important. So, and it depends on the subject matter and also the age group of the participants. Because, for example, if you're doing a sensitive subject and you have teenagers and you have someone who is, could be their mothers or their grandmothers conducting the focus group, they may tell you what they think you want to hear rather than what they really think. So that may skew the data. Is that so, or you
That
find?
is a very good point, Corinne. Thinking of the age demographic, I have done a lot on HIV, condom use, and gone into, groups with youngsters and also mature folks. And I mean, it has never been an issue for me, but I'm sensitive to it though, to know that sometimes if it is a topic where you probably would better have a female. I've been on projects where, I know that we choose, because of the nature of the topic, the gender of the moderator becomes an issue. You do not want to have a male moderator. You want to have female. So yes, you're right. You need to be careful when selecting and have options and think carefully about the composition of the group and the age, the sex of the moderator, because those things can actually impact the level of response from the participants.
And just another one, Dr. White. You mentioned that when you are doing the focus group in the physical space, if you find that you overrecruit and too many people turn up, then one moderator you could divide the group in two. But I've always thought that it was ideal to have two moderators because, if you don't, then while one person is kind of focusing on engaging the group, then the other person could be, kind of looking at nonverbal reactions for good.
Yes. Yeah. That's an important point as well. In my case, I've had, myself being moderator and then a note taker. So that person is going to take notes and can also help with observing the room and so on. But yes, the luxury of two moderators, if your budget can afford it, by all means, I would say go for it. Go for it, okay? But also the note taker is an important person as well. I see Kingsley put a question and then Yvonne has her hand up. Anything else, Corinne? You're good? I have one quick, what is the best approach for securing informed consent for virtual focus groups? I would say share the informed consent form with the participants before the focus group. Send it in an email, send it in a WhatsApp, have them do the signature and send it back to you. So you don't waste time in the focus group itself when you're supposed to do the discussion, collecting signatures. So during the screening phase or the recruitment phase, yes? Kingsley, Yvonne.
Oh, I just wanted to ask a quick question about groupthink in focus group discussion.
Yes, and so moderation again, the moderator can actually help with that. Remember, I made the point that we're going after divergent thinking. We want a range of opinions, and you can actually make that clear. In fact, one of the ground rules we normally put in a focus group is to say, we're interested in all opinions, positive, negative, even if it's not a popular opinion. And so the moderator will hear the views and keep probing. Is there another view? Is there another opinion? Another strategy I like to use is to say to persons, because sometimes when persons respond, they'll tell you, oh, I heard from a friend and, I know people who do this. Sometimes you can just target and say, but what do you believe? What do you think? Tell me about yourself, okay? And it's for you to manage it, especially when it's an unpopular view, to say, you want to get those, you know, the differences in opinion. So it's important that we hear popular, unpopular, positive, negative, and, you know, we're interested in all comments, really. Okay, so the moderator, again, will have to work that one, especially if you're getting the groupthink and the consensus and people agreeing and so on. Nancy and then Corrine.
Yeah, I have just recently I had a student who was doing focus group, PhD student, and she was so tempted to educate the people. Because some of the things come up and instead of listening, she ends up really talking and educating, spending more time on, and she didn't know what to do with the data. So what would you tell someone like that when you're collecting data and there are all these people who need info? They look at you like you're the more educated, so they want to ask you. So you become the subject at some point.
Yes, you have to resist that urge and find a way to say, we can provide you with the information after, especially when persons want to know more. You try to say to them, let's discuss the topic at hand, get the opinions in, and we will provide you with that information after, because then it turns into that educational information sharing session. And you should also try to, for lack of a better word, play dumb. Say, I don't know. I will contact the organizers of this project to find out and share with you after. And what you can do is use it to your advantage, Nancy, and say, you don't know, but then let me hear what others think. What do you know? What have you heard? Again, pulling out what are the perceptions out there? What do people know? What they don't know? It's a way for you to learn more about the knowledge levels, especially if it's a campaign you're designing. So like for the Transport Authority, let me give you a clear example. We had a situation where we're talking about uniform and persons were looking to me as moderator to say, so what is the uniform? And while I knew it, I said, you know, I'm not sure, you know, what do other people think? It's a black pants and white shirt for the Transport Authority inspectors. And so now everybody was sharing what they know, but it became clear that the target audience, they're not clear on what the uniform is. So the Transport Authority will have to do some more work there. But I didn't try to editorialize or intervene and correct. You see this thing of correcting misperceptions. No, you want to hear the misperceptions because you're going to report that back to your client to say, hey, this is what people are saying. I know it's inaccurate, but I'm not going to tell them it's wrong. You need to address that in your campaigns going forward. And because we have contact information, they can call the individual and share the correct information. So I would say do the educating after and, you know, play dumb and listen to the perceptions and the inaccuracies and allow people to speak and allow the discussion to even correct it. And, you know, just leave it open and say, okay, that's what person thinks. Here's another view. All right, we'll make a note of both and we'll clarify after the focus group. Corrine, does that help, Nancy?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. White, you mentioned that you normally speak about the incentive after the participants have consented. Now, do you think that if you happen to do that before, that the motive for participating could compromise the integrity of the information you get, of the data you collect?
Yes. Yeah. Can I tell you, Corrine, you have some people, you know, who they're very enthusiastic because when they come into the group, they'll speak up more, thinking that they'll be paid more, you know, knowing that they're going to get an incentive. It helps, it could, but again, the moderator will need to manage that, all right? And because you're doing several focus groups, you know, it will all come out in the wash, so to speak. And when you get to saturation, that talkative person who is speaking up just because they know they're getting paid, a moderator can control that individual, for example, and so on. So I hope that helps. Anthea had her hand up or no? We're good?
Yes,
I did have my hand up. Just a comment on sample sizes of groups. So
yes,
years ago, I was reading an article by Peake and Fothergill. I'm not certain the date, but it's Peake and Fothergill. And it really gripped me because they spoke about a number of experiences they had doing focus groups for academic purposes. One of the anecdotes, not really an anecdote, it's kind of like an illustration of how to handle situations that you may not have anticipated, was where they went to a particular site. They had over-recruited as they were supposed to do. And they ended up with a crowd. They ended up with, I mean, hordes of people. But the nature of the topic that they were doing the research about required them to be really, really careful in how they handled the situation. And they chose not to turn anyone away. In actual fact, the focus group became almost like a community discussion. And I think it was permissible and maybe even valuable from the standpoint of the research that they were doing to just have all of those voices weigh in on the situation. So I'm agreeing with some of the comments that have been made earlier that the moderator or moderators need to be very competent and use influence in guiding the process. Because of course the dynamics change if you have 10, 15, 20 people in a room, but then it can still be worked into the data that you gather for that particular investigation. So that's just something I thought I would mention. Close out.
Thanks for sharing that, Anthea. You know, Kruger and Casey in their book, this book here, they talk about, you know, town hall meetings being called focus groups. So when I hear you talking about 300 persons, you know, it's no longer a focus group there. Call it something else, a community meeting, a town hall meeting, and so on. But I guess they're inspired by the approach of the focus group. You know, you really want to keep it small and manageable. I must make a point quickly about, you know, sensitive topics. I've gone to an ethics committee already, and they did not approve my use of focus groups for an HIV/AIDS related topic. And their argument was, it is potentially dangerous because if you're talking about HIV, you're going to be talking about sexual behaviors. People may share personal stories. And somehow, if confidentiality is broken, you, the moderator, and the research team may protect confidentiality and not share people's names. But the participants, you have no control over one participant going out of the focus group to then share people's business, so to speak. And they insisted that I do one-on-one individual interviews for that project. So, you know, the focus group is great, but at times you want to be careful, you know, especially when you're getting in a group setting. This is why the pseudonym is important, not allowing participants to know too much about each other so that they can then walk out and say, oh, that guy just said in that meeting, in that discussion, so and so and so. And I'm not going to tell everybody about his story. So yeah, you have to be careful. It's better to be safe, you know, than sorry. And yeah, that ethics group, you know, that ethics review committee didn't, I had to change my method to an interview, individual interviews for the sensitive topic of sexual behaviors around HIV and AIDS. Yeah. Trudy, very quickly, is oral consent for an online focus group not good enough? Is a signature absolutely necessary? So you have different kinds of consent, Trudy. You have the signature, the informed consent you sign, but you can also have something called oral or implied consent. You know, you could say you're logging into this Zoom, into this online meeting is an indication of your consent to participate. All right. So the signature is not always absolutely necessary, given the circumstances that you're in and so on. Okay. It's ideal, but not necessary. Nova?
Very well. Thank you, Dr. White. That, you know, this has really been a lively discussion, and we might need a part 2, Jason. So you can have that discussion with Dr. White. Well, colleagues, let me just express our gratitude on behalf of all of us here to our presenter, Dr. White, and to all of us who have gathered to make this session another productive one. Join us next Wednesday when Dr. Chanel Taylor, a past student of CARIMAC, will be presenting on socio-ecological factors related to opioid misuse in emerging adults, conducting baseline studies to develop communication strategies. We look forward to that discussion. A reminder here that we're still scheduling presentations, so you can reach out to Jason to secure your date for this semester. And of course, remember, we offer undergraduate programs here at CARIMAC in animation, digital media production, film production, integrated marketing communication, and journalism. And we offer our master's degree programs in communication for social and behavior change, Integrated Marketing Communication and Media Management, and the MPhil PhD in Communication Studies. You can get more information on these at our website at https://www.carimac.com. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week.